So today I'm very excited and really happy to be announcing our next guest speaker, which is His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu. So I'll just give like a little introduction. So His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and today he lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with his wife, Nirakula Devi Dasi, also a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Together, they have developed an ISKCON community of 300 families in Silicon Valley, which is based on the study and distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books. He is an initiating guru in ISKCON, and he travels widely to teach the tenets of devotional service and the great art of distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. So once again, we would like to thank His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. And also just quickly, I'll just go over some really quick Zoom call rules. I mean, you guys are pretty used to it, but yeah, so just keep yourself on mute, turn your cameras on. We really appreciate it. And please use the form, for your questions, and we'll get back to them at the end of the session. So without further delay, I would invite His Grace Vaisesika Prabhu to continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Ganga. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Viditam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I say that mantra several times a day, and many of you say it also. And this morning I was taking one section of my Bhaktivedanta exams, and in it there was a description about how Bali Maharaj had become so powerful, and so much so that he was able to overcome all of the demigods in the heavenly planets and actually usurp their positions and take over Indra's throne. And Lord Krishna was explaining to Brahma and the demigods that the reason that he had become so powerful is that he was aligned with Shukracharya, his guru, who was a Brahmana. Of course, Shukracharya is not famous as being a great Vaishnava or anything, but nonetheless, the point is made there about alignment and how we can derive power by following the footsteps and also becoming instruments. And today, I was asked to speak about overcoming fear in doing outreach. Does that sound accurate and like something you want to hear about? Great, because it's actually my favorite topic. It's really where the fulcrum of advancement, power of advancement is in one's life. And I'm going to be a little brief today because I only have a half an hour. So I'm going to give some basic principles for us to think about and for you to put in your pockets so you can take it away in sutra form and then use it whenever you need it. And then we can have a little discussion so I can flesh out any of the concepts that you'd like me to work on, okay? So the first thing about being afraid of outreach, what I find in myself and in all others that I work with is that there's an inherent fear of rejection. And here are a few ways to overcome rejection. Does that ring true with any of you? And if it does, you could just give me one of these right here. I got to get a quorum to move forward. Okay, yeah, you could do it like that. Okay, good. Fear of rejection. Here are a few ways that you can overcome rejection, which will make a huge difference in your lives and also in executing outreach. The first is to remember that people reject or accept based on what's in their mind. The mind constantly vacillates between acceptance and rejection. And just because you happen to be there when somebody's on a rejection cycle doesn't really mean much. It just means that their mind happened to reject you. They don't have a lot of basis upon which to reject you most oftentimes. For instance, one of the funniest occurrences that I have happen, it actually makes me look at the whole world in a different way and look at myself in a different way. For instance, when we're going door to door, in very rare occasions, but it's notable, somebody will open the door, take a look at us outside their door as we're going to distribute books, and then immediately close the door. Like this one guy opened the door, he looked at us, and he goes, "Nope." And we were thinking, what is the basis upon which you're rejecting? We didn't say anything. All we are doing is standing there. So it's not, just remember, it's not extremely meaningful that somebody rejected you. And even if they accept you, they can reject you 2 seconds later anyway, based on their samskars, their preconceived notions, impressions in their mind that makes them predisposed to accepting certain things and rejecting others. Next is a question to ask yourselves if you have fear of rejection, and that is, can you survive rejection? Can you survive rejection, Pooja? Yes. Okay. Let me give you some food for thought about how you can strengthen your resolve to walk right into the unknown where you might be rejected. The first is an instruction given by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He said that when you go out as an instrument to spread Krishna consciousness and you're rejected, this interaction, which causes a little bit of friction in your mind, actually develops spiritual blood for your spiritual body. Chid rakta for your chid sharira. So you have a spiritual body that you're developing, and it gets spiritual blood by going out and taking a chance and getting rejected. So you can remember when you get rejected, someone says, no, I'm not interested in what you have. You just got a little transfusion of spiritual blood. Is that good? Sylvina, is that good? Yes, okay. Next is a sutra that you can live by, and that is all advancement in life takes place on the edge. If you learn to be comfortable outside your comfort zone and to feel uncomfortable in your comfort zone, you will be in a very good place for progress. Those who try to protect themselves from the environment, from rejection, from all kinds of friction from the world don't grow. In fact, those who want to grow, for instance, an athlete deliberately faces friction in, for instance, weight training. In weight training, resistance. That's the principle of training, isn't it? You go out and you train hard, you tie a tire around your waist with a chain and you run down the field. A boxer's banging into these bags all day long and facing resistance. That's how he or she gets stronger. So if you're going to grow in anything, and you all know this because you're very, very progressive people, you know that going into places where you're going to face resistance is going to make you grow. So keep that in mind as a principle. And if you're going to get a tattoo, ever, I don't recommend it, but you could tattoo that on your arm, that all growth takes place on the edge. You put right here. Or on the neck. This is very popular nowadays. Don't do it. Okay, so remember also, just as far as statistics go, the law of large numbers says in mathematics that the more time you perform an experiment, the closer you get to the actual result of the experiment. For instance, if you flip a coin 3 times and it comes out heads, you might conclude, oh, well, it's not 50-50. But if you flip it 1,000 times, you're going to get closer to the actual result, which will be closer to 50-50. So in the same way, if you're clear on your goal, which is important, and you know what you're trying to do, and you move forward, the more times you're rejected, the closer you're getting to your goal. I'll give you an example in sports, and that is in baseball, which I know you have in Toronto and Montreal. In the sport of baseball, if you get up to bat 10 times, you strike out 7, but you get a hit 3 times, you'll be paid millions of dollars. You failed 7 times, you got on base 3, millions of dollars. If you moved it up to 3.5, it would be multi-millions. So in any endeavor, don't think it's going to be 100%. Those who are willing to face rejection and strike out 7 times are the ones who hit 3 times. And like my friend says, who's a writer, that you can always edit a bad page, but you can never edit a blank page. So you have to get out, you have to get up to the plate and swing and swing. Okay, the next one you're really going to like, and that is that I want you to reach to the back of your head and feel there's something you probably never knew was there. There's a little switch on the back of your head. Can you feel it? Now, when you flip that switch up, just try it, flip it, you can turn yourself into a robot. And you know what? Robots don't care. They just go do their job. And so similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, just do your job. It's not the result isn't yours. You don't have to worry about it. Whatever comes, whatever somebody says to you, you're an automaton. What do you care? This means go out as an instrument, turn your brain off, and don't think you're the center of the universe. What somebody says to me is so important. I'm just an instrument. So this is the mantra I like. Be methodical, but dispassionate. Be methodical, but dispassionate. Learn how to be an instrument and just move through your duty and don't worry about what the result is, but be methodical. Do it the best way you possibly can at the moment and don't worry about the result. Remember, next, fear is in your mind. I hear all the time about book distribution. People say, yeah, but what about this? What about that? And for instance, somebody will say, yeah, sometimes somebody says this to me or says that to me, as if in a way that would be discouraging. And I say, how many times does it happen out of 100? And they'll say, well, maybe once out of 100, and then don't worry about it. How about once out of 50? Still don't worry about it. If it's 1 out of 3, you might be in the wrong neighborhood or doing something wrong, but still you don't have to worry about it. But generally, the things that we do worry about don't happen very frequently. We just focus on them as the all in all. So where attention goes, energy flows. And if you put attention on the rejection and think, oh, this might happen, then your energy is going to go in that direction and you'll become discouraged. And the last point is there's strength in numbers. When you go out on Sankirtan, or right now, we're not going out on Sankirtan here at ISV, we are staying in and doing bigger than we've ever done before by using the telephone and the internet. And we get together on a big Zoom call we call a calling party. And everyone behind closed mics is making their phone calls because you can see everyone else calling. You don't feel isolated and afraid of getting rejected because you're with others. And these are very practical, some of them psychological, most of them psychological, but they're very logical and applicable. They're things that you can use. And if you keep these on a index card and look at them anytime and just imbibe them, I guarantee you, will be fearless, or at least you'll be able to overcome your fears when you go forward to do your outreach. And before I go into the second major category about why we're afraid of outreach, I just want to get some questions that might expand or fill in any of the gaps in this, or not expand the gaps, that might expand the conversation or fill in any gaps that you feel are there, or reflections, things that you heard that you think might work for you. Let's start with those. Things that you heard so far, we'll take 4 of them. Anything that you heard that you think would help you in your outreach in what I mentioned so far.
I think, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
So for me, it was just like you were talking about the rejection is like that spiritual blood transfusion. Sometimes you need that in the back of your head to be like, no, I just must keep going. So that was one big like bomb for me.
Yes. Yeah, if you're thinking this is medicine and this is good for me, then, okay, it's a little bitter, but I can take it, right? Yes.
So there's 2 questions that came through, so I'll just read the first one. Shouldn't Prabhupada's books be updated a little according to time, place, and circumstances?
Now, this is a good point. The second, and this kind of moves me forward to the second point of why we might be afraid of outreach, and that is not being confident in what one is distributing. And in this case, talking about Srila Prabhupada's books. So if I'm not confident about what I'm actually handing people, then I might be hesitant or afraid to distribute books. So, for instance, some people might say, well, Prabhupada makes some outrageous statements in his books. True or false? Okay, Ananda Madhavis nodding his head. Abhay, what is your opinion? Malvika? Have you heard that before, that Prabhupada makes some heavy statements? Yeah, so if you're thinking, okay, Prabhupada makes heavy statements, what if I distribute this and somebody becomes disturbed by it or something like that, then I may be hesitant, right? That may give me pause to going out and distribute. And I think, well, I'll wait till they're all updated. And I'm not sure exactly what that means to update them. But here is a solution to that. One is, oftentimes, as we may focus on a particular fear we have in our minds, as I said before, where attention goes, energy flows, I also might hear something about Prabhupada's books or one particular isolated statement and then think, oh, this is what Prabhupada's books are like. However, what I find is, because I'm reading Prabhupada's books thoroughly and comprehensively, going through all of them, the effect of reading them is so profound, and the information as a whole is so edifying that I'm eager to distribute it. And there really isn't any replacement for this. For instance, in the past in ISKCON, people have hesitated to distribute books. They think, well, maybe people won't like it, so maybe I'll sell something else. I'll sell candles or paintings or soap on a rope or whatever you want to think of, and do something else. But what I find is, when I read Prabhupada's books for myself and I'm feeling that they are helping me, then I actually am inspired to give them to other people. So the only antidote really to that idea of there may be something in Prabhupada's books that's objectionable is to really read them comprehensively and completely. The other answer is, there are various books that you can distribute already that have been tailored in a certain way to appeal to people in more introductory ways. And if you like, you can focus on those as well. So there's a couple of choices there. Okay, let's see what else there is, Ganga.
Yes. So when we're preaching, how to deal with the fear of getting asked questions that we don't know how to answer. That is one of my fears about doing book distribution. Yes.
So let me tell you a story about our head pujari at ISV. His name is Vaisesika Prabhu. So I remember the first day when he joined our temple back in 2009 or something like that. And we were on our way out for book distribution. That is, most of the devotees in the temple. We had a Saturday morning program. We were on the way out the door, and that's the day he happened to walk in to our temple. And he said, "Hi, I'm brand new, and I'd like to find out more about this." And I said, "Well, we're on our way out on Sankirtan." And he said, "What's that?" And I said, "We're going out to distribute books. Would you like to come?" And he said, "Okay." So he came out with me and one other devotee, and all of us went around town, and we set up. At that time, we were putting up tables in front of stores with permission. And there I was with my distribution partner, and we had racks of books. And both I and the other devotee who was trained in book distribution were busy, because it was an attractive display, and people were over there looking, and we were talking to them. And then one other couple came over looking at the display, and there was no one to talk to them. So I said to Ramananda, who was brand new at that time, I said, "Oh, you talk to them." He didn't know anything about. So he pulled a Sri Upanishad off the rack, and he said, "Here, I've heard this is a good book." He said, "I haven't read it yet, but I've heard it's a good book." And he handed it to them, and they kind of paged through it, and they said, "Okay, I'll take it." And I remember they gave $10 and walked away. And I thought, in the beginning, not everyone knows all the answers. Of course, the more you know you don't know. And to become masterful in something, you have to start somewhere. And I noticed that when the Sankirtan devotees started going out, they'd come back and say, hey, I think we have to read these books now because people are asking questions. And the two actually complement each other. So there's rice, which is a world staple. Much of the world's population eats rice. Agree or disagree, Ganga? World staple? Could we consider it? Could I get nitilam? Rice? And what about dal? Is it a good food? They're both very good foods in and of themselves, but when you mix them together, rice and dal, it's a little known fact, but it's revealed in Jamuna's cookbook. She says you get 42% more nutrition by synergy when you mix rice and dal. The proteins combine together and it becomes a super protein. So in the same way, hearing and chanting is very powerful. Distribution and outreach is powerful, but when you put the two together, you get super sadhana because they complement each other. So both of them add up to the kind of sadhana you can do throughout your lifetime so that you'll attain complete success in this life, which all of you are on the fast track for right now. Okay, Ganga, what else?
Yes. So what are your views on changing the ways in which we present Krishna consciousness to others that almost takes away from the more traditional basis of our philosophy? For instance, we see increasingly Krishna consciousness being presented in the realm of yoga without specifying bhakti yoga, vegetarianism, etc. How can we incorporate modern thoughts with ancient Vedic knowledge?
Prabhupada answers this question perfectly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, fourth chapter, in the first verse. And if you memorize that purport, which will only take you half a day, and for all of you, probably about 2 hours maximum, you'll notice what Prabhupada says there, and that is that the duty of those in the parampara, which is all of us, is that we have to strictly follow the previous acharyas and not try to screw out some new meaning from what they said. We have to present the principles that they've given, but we should do it in an interesting and relevant way so that the modern audience can appreciate it. And I'll tell you a project that I'm working on right now. It's called a language project with several other devotees. And what we're doing is looking at a lot of the phraseology, the words that we use oftentimes in our organization that we take for granted. And then we're unpacking those words so that they're used in such a way that you can, so that people don't have a knee-jerk reaction to them. For instance, if you say God, then oftentimes, as Radhika Raman Prabhu once said, this is a very flabby word. It doesn't have a lot, there's not a lot of meaning to it except for the fact that people react to it according to the way the context they've heard it in before. So for instance, in my corporate talks that I give each week to Google and Intel and Salesforce, when I'm talking to people there who are brand new at this, when I talk about God, I'll say our original conscious source. And then when I'm talking about yoga, I'll articulate what that means, that it comes from the root word yuj, and that means to connect, and who are we connecting with. For instance, I did a talk about, the title of the seminar was, What's Love Got to Do with It? And then there was a number of questions about it, and ultimately I described Krishna as love personified, and how when we connect to our original conscious source, who is love personified, then we're in the state of yoga and so forth. So a lot of it has to do with the way that we're analyzing what we're saying and how we're saying it. It's very important. But the point is, if you start off on this bent to avoid talking about our relationship with our original conscious source, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's very hard later to bridge the gap. So if you're only talking about vegetarianism or only about yoga without mentioning what its purpose is, when are you going to break it to them? You'll go way down the road and then say, oh, by the way. And then, so it's a lot easier to stay close to or right on the target, but just use phraseology that will help them to understand what you're talking about. There's a lot more to be said about that. It's a very good question, and we could talk more in another time. 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left.
Would you like to take a last question, or just maybe keep giving tips? Or
I'd love to take another question, because
Okay,
these questions
perfect.
are so good.
Okay, great. So the next question is, I'm reluctant to share the Bhagavad Gita with new people because of what Srila Prabhupada says about women. What is your experience or point of view on this?
Well, my experience is that it's a mixed experience. I've had some people blow up when they hit text 140 and they read a purport that it's very difficult for them to understand. However, what I do find is that when people are socialized in a group, in other words, if you just give it to them independently, say, go home and read this, and they don't have association with devotees, they're not hearing in the association of devotees, then it may be hard for them to assimilate something like that. However, I do find that when people are interacting with you as the practitioner and they see who you are, they feel what your qualities are, when they read something that they don't understand that's from a different era or culture as far as their context is concerned and may seem offensive to them, there's a way in which they justify it by their relationship with you. They say, oh, well, I already know Dula. Is that your name, Dula? I already know Dula. She's like this, she's like that, so it must mean something else. There must be something more to the culture. And the other is to preemptively talk about these subject matters by category, to cover them in such a way so that there's a comprehensive understanding that the people you're talking to have about the context of the Bhagavad Gita and so forth. And that really helps also. There's not any religious scripture in the world that doesn't have some statement that seems anachronistic to people or out of step with the culture. There never will be. So the job isn't to change the message or change the books, but it's actually to find ways in which to accommodate people and build bridges. And that's why they give you the big bucks as preachers. That's why Krishna says there's no person in this world more dear to me than the person who takes the risk and the trouble of doing this kind of work, which you're all doing. Well, Ganga, 2 more minutes. What should we do?
We can wrap up.
Okay. Well, let me use my last minute and a half to see if there's any reflection or question from the Zoom room.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Very nice.
Hare Krishna,
you
Jessica.
again.
Good to see you.
I'm so excited to see you. Just one of my biggest reflection is that you have strength in numbers, and everyone thinks that, book distributors, they're so idolized almost at times, but anyone and everyone can actually join. And definitely when we all come together, there's always this type of energy that gets created, especially when there's kirtan and music and little prasadam. So I think that was one of the best points that you made.
Thank you very much. Vaidehi, what do you think? Any comment about the talk and our time together? What is one impression in your mind? Shamapriya? Sagar? Ayan? DP? Gorangi?
Haribol, I wanted to reflect.
Yes.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful small class. I've been really, I've been watching a lot of videos on preaching, and especially college preaching now that I'm in college. And yeah, it's very, I find in my head it's very intimidating, but because you broke down my fear into different parts, you really showed me that honestly it's all in my head. It's all really my ego, and that I should really do it for Krishna, because Krishna is the center and I'm not the center.
Oh my God. Ganga, I'm going to end on that note. Surabhi, you just put a perfect ending on this for me anyway. Thank you very much. I'm deeply touched to hear that reflection. And, it's very heartening to see all of you so vibrant, educated, powerful, And just with this one group here, you'll really conquer the world, really. And I've just been emphasizing that the youth, this generation, your generation, has the power to really change the world. And the fulcrum of power, as I said in the very beginning, is following the footsteps of the acharyas, and use your God-given intelligence to find out innovative ways to make it available, but don't hold back. It's the best thing that you can do for sadhana and for yourselves and for the world. Thank you very much, Radha Bhakti, for inviting me on here. And Ganga, what great job of moderating. I deeply appreciate it. And to all of you, Vanchakalpatarvishya Kripasindhavevacha Patitanam Bhavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Can everyone unmute and say Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Gaur Premanande Haribol.
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 Thank you, Vaisesika Prabhu.
All right, guys, let's jump on to our next activity with Yadunath Prabhu.